I've got these voices in my head. They say I'm a dumb bitch. They say I'm useless. They say, Yumi, you're a loser. But the more I drink, the quieter and more shrunken that voice gets. It's like it starts as a big white orb, but the drunker I get, the more it shrinks into a little tiny pinprick in this big black open space. And what you're chasing as you're drinking is just for that to just be completely disappeared.
The Imperfects invites you into a very safe place. A place where we share without judgment and drink heaps of vulnerability. Grab yourself a cup. This is the Vulnerability House. A lot of firsts happen on this show, but this is officially the first mohawk on the Imperfects. I gotta say, I thought we'd lost our edge. Turns out we haven't.
Are you feeling inspired? Or?
I am. God, imagine if I rocked up today with that exact haircut. How embarrassing. Anyway, Yumi Stynes is here, mohawked, as you have been for a while now.
Yeah, and I never use the word mohawk because I feel like it's culturally appropriating.
Is it really?
I don't know, but I just call it a drastic undercut on both sides.
Yes, okay.
Yeah.
And
Okay.
upness.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I'll never say the M word again. Sorry about that. I did, but you're right. I didn't think about it until just then. You're so true. You're so right. Yeah. Okay, well, just dramatic. Was it dramatic undercut?
Dramatic undercut.
sides.
Yeah.
On both sides. I did have an undercut in high school.
Did it
So-
make you feel like a badass?
It's as close as I got to being a badass. That's for sure.
I can't really picture with your hair and undercut.
Well, because I used to have the middle part, like long hair on
right.
both sides, and the undercut was really practically needed because I have so much volume that if I didn't have the undercut,
Well done, mate.
it would just be the hair would just go like horizontal. It's just so much curl underneath it. So it was really just to get as close to Eddie Vedder as possible.
It's such a humble brag, don't you reckon, for a man to say, I just have so much hair?
Oh
Yeah. It's unruly. I have to shave it down to keep it in check.
That's true.
Yeah.
Have you been tempted to get channels?
Channels.
Remember channels?
Yeah, like little sort of
Speed
stripe.
stripes.
Lines.
No, not really. I did once have a guy who was an artist in Newtown, Sydney, who used to carve sort of shapes into a shaved head. And he did it, and it took so long. It took about 3 hours that I fell asleep in the chair, kept nodding off and then waking up, and he'd sculpted these patterns into my hair. My hair grows so fast, Ryan, that it was gone within 2.5 weeks.
Annoying.
Seemed like a big investment for low returns. Looked hot for a hot minute on TV, and then over.
There was a kid that I remember seeing when I was young. He didn't go to our school, but he was from a slightly rougher school than I went to. But he had shaved head, and then he had the Honda logo shaved into his head.
My favourite is the guy that paused a YouTube video to show his barber what he wanted, and the barber shaved the play symbol into his head.
I've seen that.
How good's that?
Amazing.
That's excellent. Oh, wow. God.
Very good.
All right. Yumi Stynes. We all know who Yumi Stynes is. For the uninitiated,
Yeah.
run us through it.
Well, Bella writes does all the research and puts together a bio, which I usually go vaguely off. I'm going word for word here because I really love what she's written.
Great.
Cool. Okay.
Okay. Were you pausing for applause? I don't know.
I feel pregnant from that pause.
Yeah. You really made sure you connected with everyone's eyes after you said that. Just did the rounds of the table.
I don't know why I did that.
So watch this, guys.
Actually read something that someone else wrote.
Yeah, wow, it's so impressive, Hugh. Well done. Let's see how you go.
Yumi Stynes is powerful, and she isn't afraid that you might not like her. Yumi grew up in Swan Hill, Victoria, where she quickly realised that people like her, who looked different from the average Australian, didn't have a voice in mainstream Australian media. Yumi attended Monash University, where she fell in love with the student radio station and volunteered numerous hours. Yumi began to make a name for herself in media as she hosted Channel V.
Love Channel V.
In 2010, Yumi joined Network 10 as a co-host on the premier breakfast show, The Circle. During this time, Yumi also co-hosted the 3 p.m. Pickup with Chrissy Swan, which was broadcast nationally.
Chrissy Swan was also on The Circle.
Yep.
Jeez, double Chrissy.
She
Lucky.
was also on The Imperfects.
True.
Yumi is deeply invested in education around sexual health and is the host of the extremely popular podcast Ladies We Need to Talk, which focuses on female health and sexuality. She's co-authored 4 books in the Welcome To series, winning ABIA Children's Book of the Year in 2020 for Welcome to Your Period, as well as being shortlisted for 2024 Young Adult Indie Book Award and a finalist for ABIA Children's Book of the Year for Welcome to Consent. Yumi has 4 wonderful children that she describes as her happy place. Welcome to The Imperfects.
Yay. That was a beautiful. Thanks, Bella.
It was good, wasn't it?
She's done
Yeah.
incredibly well. I mean, I really love the books that you've written, the Welcome To series. I love the idea so much of that as a series because you must have so many versions of it that you want to do.
Definitely. And there's 2 more books in the pipeline that I'm working on right now.
Awesome.
But the book started basically from the podcast, actually, Ladies We Need to Talk, because we've got all these adult women listening to this content going, why wasn't I taught about this way back when it would have been really useful to learn about, for instance, what happens with a period? Why was that so shrouded in mystery and so hard to discover information around how your hormones make you feel? Or let's shift the conversation to consent. Like, why don't I know what consent really looks like in the real world? You know, this idea of yes means yes and no means no seems very prescriptive. And also, what does it mean when I'm drunk at a party? So we were having these conversations with older women and thinking, how do we take this back to where it needs to be told and taught in a really safe way? And that seemed like young teens could really benefit from the Welcome To books.
When you listened to the bio just then, how did you feel?
Pretty seen. I like being powerful, and I also really like that you picked up, or that Bella picked up, that I don't need to be friends with everybody. I don't need to be liked by everybody. It's something I learned in Swan Hill. It's like, oh, people just hate me because I'm Asian. It's got nothing to do with my personality, my level of kindness, the fact that I think I'm unreal and I'm really annoying. It was just like, wow, there's no defense against this. So I quickly learnt to kind of just take it when people don't like you. It's an acceptance of that. And I'm moving on. You know, there's some people you can convince, there's some people you can't. Just be at peace with that.
So it's something you learned at a young age then.
Yeah.
I find that,
That's amazing.
I mean, most people never learn how to do that.
Well, I think a lot of people do actually, and a lot of women do, particularly because, you know, we're expected to fit certain binaries of behaviour, you know, be appeasing, you know, why don't you smile, love? Like that is a real thing that people tell women every single day. And at some point, I think a lot of us just go, actually, you know what? Go fuck yourself. Go fuck yourself, fuck your smile. I'm not doing that for you. I'm not doing it for me. Yeah.
It's brilliant. I love it. I mean, I feel like as someone who writes, and I mean, you're a presenter, you're a creative person, does it kind of go as far as to you not worrying about what other people think about your work as well?
A little bit, yeah. I mean, I really, really want to connect with the people I'm aiming to connect with, and I have in my mind a picture constantly. So who's reading this and how do I really speak clearly to that person? Being teenagers, you can't faff with language. You have to be really quite clear. And so I feel I owe a huge debt to those people, and I must listen to feedback from them. But my number one person is myself. So, you know, you write a draft and it's usually garbage and that's fine. And then you redraft it and then it starts to sound absolutely unchangeably perfect. That's the draft that you're going to submit. But you know yourself what looks really good to you and what looks like garbage, and you just have to keep tinkering away until there's that resonance inside your chest where you're like, yeah, this is good. This is how I want it to be. This will make me proud.
Yeah. I have a little bit of feedback.
Yes.
And it's purely positive.
Oh, no.
Jeez. I got nervous there.
Oh, I've got some. No. I just wanted to say that you also have the greatest recipe for honey soy chicken wings in the world.
Thank you, Josh.
And it is unbelievable if you guys haven't tried it.
Yeah.
It's about the only thing that I know my kids will reliably eat every time I make it, and it's impressed everyone who's had the pleasure of eating.
And I call it the vegetarian converters because I used to live next door to one of my best friends, Julie Bennett, and she was a vegetarian for 20 years, and she used to be hanging out in my kitchen all the time, and she'd just go, just give me one of those wings. Nom, 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 nom. If you want that recipe, it's in my current cookbook, which is the Food Fix. There's a version of that in there, but it is something I inherited from my mum.
Oh, right. Okay.
And guess where she got it? My Japanese, tiny, diminutive little Oriental lady mum got it from the Australian Women's Weekly cookbook.
That's great.
That's brilliant.
Hilarious.
You are very much a foodie. You used to travel a long way as a kid to your the Asian grocer. Is that right?
That's right.
Yeah.
From Swan Hill to Melbourne to get to the Asian grocer. I mean, we didn't go there over an afternoon. It was like we're missioning to Melbourne. We're going to see all the relatives. We're going to go see some culture and art, and we're going to stop off at the Japanese grocer and pick up a bunch of supplies to last us until next time. And for my mum, this was like a big deal. You know, she would get things that you can get so commonly now, like seaweed, azuki beans, tofu we couldn't get back then.
Really?
Yeah, so we'd buy all these things, and then it would come back to Swan Hill with us, and we could eat her culture in our home.
As many Women's Weekly recipes as you want.
We had a lot of that as well.
So we are in the Vulnerabilitea House. We're all drinking tea.
Mm-hmm.
And
As proof.
As proof, yeah.
Yep.
The cards are sitting in front of you, Yumi. So for those of you who are new to the Imperfects, on each of these cards is a vulnerable question, and we do this because vulnerability, which is where you take an emotional risk, when you do that, so often it leads to authentic connection, and we do feel like authentic connection is just such a key ingredient to living a fulfilling and happy life. So that's why we do it. Mm-hmm. The cards are in front of you, Yumi, if you'd like to draw a card.
Well, you can pick the first 3 cards.
Yep.
And if you read them out, and then if any of those 3 speak to you, then
I just forgot the rules.
Is that the rules?
well,
loose rules.
They're pretty loose rules.
Okay.
So what have you got?
What event from your childhood changed you?
Mm-hmm.
That's pretty big, isn't it?
Yeah, I think most people would probably have an answer for that, but to different degrees, I guess.
What is something that took you too long to learn? Definitely have an answer immediately to that one. And what was your biggest fear as a young person? Those are big. I think these two are related, so maybe I could answer both of them. Is that all right?
2 for 1.
First 2, yeah. Which ones were they?
Too long to learn something.
Yep.
And event from your childhood that changed you. The thing that took me too long to learn was that me and alcohol don't mix.
Oh, wow.
And I really wish that I'd learnt that quicker. Because there's such a line in my life. Like I think I've been reflecting on COVID and how there's this big margin of time in everyone's lives that we've stepped over, and we refer to it constantly back in COVID or pre-COVID. And there's going to be a generation of kids who are like, oh, God, I didn't live through that. Don't know what you're talking about.
Yeah.
For me, the big margin in my life includes COVID, of course, but it includes the post-drinking and pre-quitting.
Mm-hmm.
And this huge, I think, spiritual growth that I did from quitting drinking. The way that I figured a bunch of stuff out from quitting drinking. And it ties in with the first question, what event from your childhood changed you? Because the big event from my childhood was my father passing away. Mm-hmm. And I was quite young, and it was a very formative experience to watch somebody that you're quite close to get sicker, get thin, shrink like into a small man.
Mm-hmm.
How old were you?
I was 19, so 19. Technically probably not a child, but I really felt a sense of how important it is to live fully, because he was only 58. And he could have been such a beautiful grandpa and had such a wonderful third act, but he only got to the end of his second act, and that was the end of his life. But the other thing with his choices in his life was the drinking was part of his life big time. And I really wonder what it might have looked like for him if he had to put that margin, that line in the sand for his life and made different choices there. So I wish I'd learnt it quicker that drinking and myself are not to be, they need to be divorced for life. And I kind of knew it. And a lot of people with alcohol problems do know it. It's just the quitting part's actually really hard because your body's addicted and it's so socially acceptable. You do go into cravings. Like come 5 o'clock, your body's like, all right, drink a clock. And it's very hard to argue with that when the feeling of being sober and hungover is so awful. And the best fix in that moment is more alcohol. So that's the thing I wish I'd learnt quicker.
Can I ask what drinking looks like to you? Like, what are we talking here? Was it sort of a daily thing, or was it wait for the weekend and go berserk, or?
It was mostly daily, and I would usually, if I'd pushed it quite hard and I felt really rotten the next day, I would have a day off. But that generally meant that the following day I would go even harder. Mm-hmm. So it was pretty much daily. Mostly, luckily for me, I chose to only drink beer most of the time, and that's a drink that doesn't wreak too much havoc on my system. Do you know what I mean? But I would secretly drink. I would buy a 6-pack and then ask my partner to buy me a 6-pack. So he didn't know I had 2 6-packs on the go. It would look like I'd finished 5, but I'd actually had 11 drinks.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
So even in the house, like sort of.
Yeah.
Okay.
And I think it's a really common thing for parents of young kids is you're stuck at home. This is particularly mums. You're stuck at home. You don't have an outlet. You're full of frustration. You're absolutely wedded to that baby.
Yeah.
And you can't catch a break. The breaks are like maybe in a week's time you can go for a walk by yourself or something. It's really, really hard.
Yeah.
But you can escape by drinking, and it's actually completely acceptable. You can do it quietly. You can do it while you're bathing the kid. You can do it while cooking dinner. You know, there's a bunch of ways you can kind of incorporate it that people think is okay. And that's what I did, and I could feel the need to chase oblivion, which I think is what drinking is. It's for a lot of us. It's I've got these voices in my head. They say I'm a dumb bitch. They say I'm useless. They say, Yumi, you're a loser. But the more I drink, the quieter and more shrunken that voice gets. It's like starts as a big white orb, but the drunker I get, the more it shrinks into a little tiny pinprick in this big black open space. And what you're chasing as you're drinking is just for that to just be completely disappeared. The only problem is that the next day it's bigger and it's full of recrimination and shame.
It's really, really heartbreaking to hear these say, like the voices in your head. I mean, clearly you're used to it. You're maybe used to talking about it. But just hearing you say it now, it's quite impactful and very heartbreaking. Like horrible things to hear about yourself. So and almost, and maybe I don't know if this is the right thing to say, but almost like makes the drinking like understandable when you give the reason for it. And I'm just immediately thinking about anyone who's struggling with drinking. When you say it like that, I just think, well, maybe there is a really horrible reason, a thing that they voices they're trying to silence or diminish. I don't know. I've never struggled with alcohol, and no one in my family has. But do you think? Like, I'm not sure at what age you started drinking a lot, but is there a correlation between like your dad drinking and you drinking, do you think, or is it separate?
It's definitely what was modelled in my home as being very normal, which I think is part of being, country Victorian, but also my age. The dads all got drunk at barbecues. The mums got pretty pissy as well. It was just very, very normal. I know there's a lot of people whose parents didn't do that, but that was in our circles, rural communities, that's what everybody did.
Yeah.
And even just thinking about quantities, it wasn't until I got pregnant for the first time and just did not feel like drinking alcohol that I've experienced sobriety for a long chunk of time, but also weighed up what a normal amount of alcohol to drink in a session was. It was like, people just have 1.5 glasses. Why so restrained? I don't understand. I thought you had to just absolutely like destroy every single amount of alcohol in the house until there was nothing left. I thought that's how you drank.
Right.
So there was a lot of modelling of that. But I think also, and some of my work at Ladies We Need to Talk has kind of unfurled this a little bit tentatively. A lot of women's drinking is about kind of dealing with putting a Band-Aid over traumas that we've experienced. And we don't have somewhere to put that. It's often about sexual assault. We don't have the means or the will to go there. So we're just like, you know what, I'm just going to drink this pain away.
The way you described the silencing of the voices, or at least the sort of diminishing the voice, I can relate to a lot, having had a voice like that of my own for a lot of my life and having drunk way too much for way too long. We've recently done this live show and we do a version of this Tea House live, and I pulled a card, this exact card. I want to take you too long to learn about yourself. And I spoke about the fact that I drank for many, many years, and it's kind of strange how much your story is echoing mine, in that it was having kids and just not being able to drink. That was the first time that I had a few weeks like without having a bender, and realised that for me personally, it wasn't just trying to silence that voice that was telling me that I was useless or failing at life or all these many things that, as a psych once said, if you heard someone talking to a dog like that, you would think there was something wrong with them, yet you're happy to say it to yourself. It wasn't just silencing or minimizing those voices. I started to realize recently that the amount of time that I was spending, because I was sort of going out from a Thursday to a Sunday maybe, and drinking and then feeling hungover for like 4 days, or really down for 4 days a week, was actually causing a lot of the problems as well, and it was growing that voice. Does that resonate with you?
Oh, for sure.
Yeah.
And that's the thing about quitting drinking, is once you come over the other side, the voice isn't nearly as bad. And the things that you were down on yourself about, like I forgot my friend's birthday, or I said something really mean and insulting while drunk, they don't happen anymore. Because you're showing up for your friends because you're sober and good, and you're not saying mean things because sober you is the complete you. I think that for a lot of people, when you get drunk and this side of you comes out, you feel like maybe that's your authentic self coming out.
Yeah.
And that person can sometimes be just vile, you know, like horny for the wrong person who's your friend's partner, or really critical of people that you deeply love and saying things that you would never say sober. You fear that that's your authentic self, but actually when you quit alcohol and that person doesn't exist anymore. It's such a beautiful relief, because you can trust yourself. And a lot of social anxiety goes away because you don't go out to dinner with a bunch of people that you respect, fearing that you're going to say something stupid or really devastatingly mean because you're drunk, because it's only sober you is showing up for dinner. So you can be trusting that person is going to just be totally loving and fine.
Yeah.
How's your sobriety?
Well, I wouldn't say so. I wouldn't say I'm definitely not sober, but I also think that for whatever reason I'm okay at having a few drinks and stopping from whatever thing in my constitution. It's just that I think it's tied into identity, after what you were talking about there before, because I had and sorry to make this your episode about me, but throughout my teenage years I was trying to be perfect for some stuff that we're dealing with at home, and then when I sort of started drinking, that was the first time I started to feel like myself, because I was having fun and going out and playing in bands with mates and going to music festivals, and I was like, oh, this is who I am. So then I tied, as I hadn't just realised until you just said it, I think I tied my identity to that version of myself. And it wasn't until having kids that I started to realise, oh, there's a better version of me that I like a lot more. And for whatever reason, I can have a couple of drinks now and not need to drink more. So I'm lucky that I think I've got whatever chemical makeup inside me that allows that to happen. But it's just been an interesting journey, and I'm really enjoying being able to live with that voice a bit more as well, rather than be overcome by the negative voice. Because it's still there, but it's like I can kind of keep it in check a bit. Yeah, does that ring
Totally.
true?
And the voice that used to say you're shit and you're a loser is now like, no, you wrote 4 books, you're good. Like you've done some cool stuff. And it's like I can totally understand that that voice might exist somewhere, but it's like a tiniest bit of fluff on my shoulder, you know. And I think that's partly growing up, where you hit your middle years and you're like, I kind of feel like I got chops now, you know. It's like when you run a marathon or whatever, you run a half marathon, you're like, people can't take that away from me. Like you can argue that I didn't, but I freaking did. So so try and take that away. You sort of feel more established in your self-esteem and your accomplishments, but also you haven't allowed that monstrous you to come and inhabit your body anymore.
You spoke before quite painfully, I think, or for me to hear, about the sort of monstrous version of you that comes out with the drinking, that that's not you. Was there a time when the drinking brought out a version of you that you thought was you?
Oh, yeah. And I'm heaps of fun.
Yeah.
I'm heaps of fun when I'm drunk. And that sort of self-consciousness, like I don't want to dance, or, you know, I don't want to get up on stage, or I'm shy. Those sorts of feelings, they still exist, and alcohol definitely helped to shrink that and make me more powerful, you know, socially powerful or socially fearless. So there were fun times, absolutely. It's just working out what coolness is. And actually, I think one of the questions here was, what was your biggest fear as a young person? That's the one I put back. But I think a lot of my fears as a young person was to be uncool. Yeah. I really wanted to be cool, you know? And I was like, I can't be cool and be vulnerable. I have to be impenetrably fucking awesome and not show anybody that I'm feeling insecure or daggy, or, you know, that I do, I don't know, whatever, smell weird sometimes. It's just actually, I think that is the coolest. I think vulnerability is incredibly cool. And I feel like I'm a scientist of cool, because I'd spent 10 years at Channel V interviewing the coolest people in the world, you know, and I really spent time weighing up what makes a Dave Grohl cool, or what, you know, what makes Iggy Pop freaking cool. And it's vulnerability. It's their ability to be silly and playful and admit stupidity, admit mistakes. So that actually, realizing that helped me to just shed my armor, which I needed alcohol to maintain.
It's a profound realization, the vulnerability linked to coolness thing. Did you have that? Is that something that's a recent thing, or did you work it out while you were working, still interviewing these people, or is it?
I think both, but I think you keep learning it as you get older. I remember women talking to me about menopause, and I would be like, why are you talking to me about that? Like, I don't want to know where your womb is at. I don't want to know your hormonal situation. It seems like too much information about something that's kind of shitty that's happening to you. As I got older, I was kind of like, actually, this is very good. This is very healthy and wholesome to talk about it with younger women who aren't there yet. Unfurl your ovaries in front of me, your fallopian tubes, spread them out, and let's fossick through it and figure out what our futures are going to look like.
It's a pretty intense dinner party.
Right. Would you like some caviar with that? That kind of vulnerability is just, it's something that seems to be all around me in different and glorious ways, and I really enjoy it.
Do you think, not sure how long you were drinking for, but were you ever drinking or drunk while you were working or performing? And the reason I ask is because did you get confidence from the drinking to perform at a level you wanted to perform? And then when you stopped drinking, did that affect the way that you approached work and performing?
I'm glad my answer is pretty legit prefecty. To this, because I would be deeply ashamed if I had to say actually I was drunk on air a lot of the time, because I never was. I had a bit of an ethos about you start drinking when you knock off work. When I first started at Channel V, I used to smoke weed a lot. It was just a uni thing, you know, bongs, and the first few times that I was stoned on air, I got so paranoid. I was so afraid. My bowels felt like they were turning to ice. That kind of like chill feeling, like, oh my God, I'm standing on a cliff's edge. So I never did it again, and I sort of had that about drinking as well. Thank God. But there were a couple of times when I was massively hungover, and that would affect how I could bring myself to work, to the job. One of the things about being like a personality on air rather than, say, a newsreader or something is that you do have to bring yourself to the show. So I always felt like I owed it to the audience to bring a positive, upbeat version of me. One of the things about not working for such a long time, which happened when I kind of got cancelled, was a reminder that even if you're talking to 6 people, that's still a privilege. You know, it might not be 40,000 people watching the big day out coverage. It might be 6 people, but you still owe it to them to bring it.
Would you be comfortable talking about that journey through cancellation as something really so minor, but it had such a profound impact on your life? And I'm also interested to know if alcohol was if you were drinking then and what that did throughout that whole.
Yeah, so I got cancelled in, I think it was around 2012 for a comment I made about a war guy.
And you had so much going on at that time. You must have felt like this is everything I've ever wanted was happening for you at that time. Is that?
Yeah, and I was thinking Ryan would be able to relate to this, is this feeling like you get a job on the radio and then you kind of aspire to do the breakfast shift, because that's the important shift, and you want either Melbourne or Sydney because they're the important territories. And when you get there, you hang on for dear life until you get axed, right? This seemed to be the trajectory that you go for. You also might have a TV show, and again, you're aiming for ratings, but you're also aiming for prime time. You're getting sponsorship deals, you're getting speaking gigs. They're all adding up into enough money to support your family and maybe buy a home, which is out of reach for so many people. So you're feeling like you're nailing life.
Yeah.
And everything should be a step up this staircase towards money and ticker tape parades for yourself.
Ultimate unbridled happiness.
And then I made this comment about an army guy, and within a few weeks, things started to just fall apart in my career.
When you say an army guy, like a guy who was in the army? Is that-
Yeah. I don't like saying his name. His name feels like toxic poison in my mouth.
Yeah.
So I never say his name, but he was a big army dude. People loved him. And I just thought, that kind of guy is not my type.
Yeah.
Not feeling it.
And you said this on the
Circle.
On the Circle, okay.
Yeah, and it wasn't really much more than that. It was just like, that guy's not my type. He looks kind of like an idiot. Moving on.
Yeah.
But you're not allowed to criticise some people, and I think Anzacs rate higher than Jesus in this country. So would I be wrong? Yeah.
No.
That was what it was. That was the comment.
Yeah.
I think your story is kind of proof of that.
Yeah, totally. So it got picked up by those radio jock guys who really love to spark a pile
Shock
on.
jockey kind of.
Yeah. And within a few weeks, sponsors had withdrawn their support from the Circle.
Whoa.
Yeah, so a coffee company which had rebuilt the entire green room to be full of their signage and labelling, and they would give us coffee, and it was always about that. It all got like literally yanked off the walls and binned. I remember that a vitamins company withdrew their support. So suddenly the show, which was financially stable, was on very shaky ground. My radio show was on shaky ground, and eventually the TV show got axed. And it was a bit of a turnaround of maybe about 4 or 5 months between the incident and the axing, but it all felt very related.
Jeez, that is brutal.
Yeah, it is brutal because it wasn't just me going down. It was all the producing staff and the juniors and the crew.
Yeah.
And I felt so responsible and so mortified. But I also I lost so much sleep about this because I couldn't process how not to make the same mistake again. And, this is what victims of assault or whatever, they try to go, okay, next time I won't go into that car park by myself. Or, you try and work out how to avoid that again. And I just couldn't work out how I could have foreseen that outcome from my comments.
It's such a great observation. I mean, because you saying that, I mean, if you're on a show, the Circle was daily.
Yeah.
And whether it's that or a radio show, there's so much time to talk.
Yeah.
And you want to bring your true self. One person's going to find him cute, the other person and things, And so just to say that, you would have said so many other things. I'm sure everyone on the show would have said so many things that were way worse. But you're just being yourself. And then to be kind of like slapped on the wrist and, well, worse, for saying what you think is... how do you reckon with that? Like, how do you move on from that?
Well, it took a couple of years, really, and I couldn't get my head around it. And it wasn't until Yasmin Abdel-Majid had her cancellation that I kind of went, it doesn't matter what you say, it's just by existing as a non-white woman in the media in Australia that people get angry. And how dare you even talk, especially about things like soldiers, service men and women, the Anzacs, anything like that. It is really, really tricky to go there. But it's really just existing in the public eye. A lot of people just want you to just actually die.
Did you hear stuff like that? Were people saying, did it get that bad for you? Were people saying...
Hugh, did it get that bad for me?
As in...
I had 36,000 people phoning Channel 10. The show didn't even rate 36,000 people watching it, but they were all triggered by the shock jocks, but they were also piling on the Circle Facebook page, offering very graphic descriptions of how I should be killed and how they would kill me. It was rapey. It was extreme violence, where people were like shook. to read what people were writing from their own Facebook accounts. Yeah, it was really, really full on. And, you know, as Yasmin said when I interviewed her, you can't unsee it.
Yeah.
You've seen it, you can't unsee it, and it's got nothing to do with what you've said, because in analysis it's not that big of a deal. It's just who you are. They just don't like who you are. So that brings us right back to the start of this conversation where, you know, you're a little girl growing up in Swan Hill. People just don't like you for who you are, and there's nothing you can do about it.
I was going to ask a question. I think you've kind of answered it, but I also wondered, it sounds like it's much worse than what I would have guessed, because that is appalling. There's a phenomenon around this, and someone else here might know the phrase, but there's this idea, I think, that sometimes in the public space, in media, that you're allowed to be a person of colour or of different origin, but you have to play a certain role.
Mm-hmm.
Like, we're happy for you to be the fun girl on V, but don't ever make us challenge or question anything.
Yeah, it's called the model minority.
Okay.
Yeah, so you can be the minority, but you have to be a model citizen. You have to be getting A's, you know, you have to be volunteering. You have to just be immaculate, unimpeachable performance of everything, especially gratitude for being Australian. Or in
because
Australia.
that's transgressing the one privilege that and I'm saying this in huge inverted commas, that we gave you.
Totally.
Yeah.
Yeah. So don't criticise Australia.
Yeah. And another example of this in the media, I think, is which is ironic considering, is Adam Goodes. I think it's like, you're okay if you play football perfectly, but the moment you make us question anything political or anything about that, or anything about our history with Indigenous people, you've gone too far. Yeah.
And when he did that spear dance sort of motion, it was such a beautiful embodiment of his pride in his indigeneity. And people were like, no, we want you to want to be more white.
Yeah.
Like, how dare you celebrate your blackness? And that's the thing with being a model minority. It's all about edging closer and closer towards whiteness. If you can't be white, you can at least act as white as you can. That's what people want to see.
God.
What was your drinking like during this? Did you have a memory of you having to drink more, or were you out of survival? Was it less?
I think it was just pretty much as it was. I actually can't remember, Hugh. I think it was probably pretty bad, but I have no memory of it. I went through periods of sobriety in that time, knowing that eventually I would be full-time sober forever and ever. But I didn't. I don't remember what I was doing then. Probably just getting drunk a lot. Yeah. I also had, actually, at the same time as that cancellation. So when you work in radio, they start talking secretly about contracts around June, July, August, right? You know about this, right? And if no one's having that conversation with you, you know your head's on the block, right? But they'll lie to you and say, no, we're renewing it. The contract's just with the lawyers. You'll get it in 2 weeks, and then you wait a month and it still hasn't arrived. It's just a miserable game. But I remember being part of the cycle, you know, where you're used to this coming around June, July, August. And when I got cancelled, those milestones would tick over, and just I'm not getting any calls. No one's offering me a job. I'm a good broadcaster, but no one wants to hire me. Oh my God, there was this huge vacancy, and that was my career. So during that time, I had 2 kids, which was good for my sobriety, because something about pregnancy just puts me right off a bunch of things, including alcohol. But that was really hard as well. It was like, I've got a newborn baby. I want to go back to work. Somebody give me something, you know. I think, you know, I earned $28,000 one year. Just that was my whole entire income. It was brutal. But that is also when I started to write cookbooks, because I was like, okay, I can't talk without mucking it up and angering people. I can talk about food in a way that is safe. It's almost completely apolitical. It's not. Hot tip, it's not. But it is in this country. Like, you can write a cookbook, no one's going to try and cancel you for it. So that's sort of where I started to set my mind to this particular task, which I could do in private, at home, in my own time when the kids were sleeping, and understand that sort of piecemeal approach to a bigger goal. It's like a recipe every week. I'm going to just slowly plod along and make this happen, and then I'm going to have an entire manuscript.
In that the time when you're cancelled and the phone stopped ringing, just try to imagine what that feels like. Like my level of confidence in my abilities is mediocre most of the time, just because it's just general self-worth and confidence things that people have. Like I don't think I'm terrible, but I also don't think that I'm not going to get every job. Like I've done enough auditions now to know that like not everyone's going to like what I do, and that's relatively fine. But what you spoke before about like the voices in your head. What were the voices in your head saying? Maybe just the same things but louder, and maybe you were believing them. I don't know. Like, how were you reacting to those voices in that time?
They were really loud. And I also felt infectious. I felt like if I see my friends who are, successful, I'm going to pollute them with my failure or my bad reputation. And that was a really painful thing to think about was, I have this reputation now and I can't do anything about it.
Are you worried it would like rub off on them?
Yeah, you don't want to be seen with her. And so I'd have this preemptive sort of unwillingness to infect my friends by being seen with them. And also I didn't have anything positive to say. I was in post-natal depression. I didn't have any work. I kind of was in a marriage that I probably should have thought through a bit more. So, it was really hard. The voices were really loud. But the one thing that got me through, Ryan, I think was developing a new addiction, which was to exercise. Mm-hmm. So that started in pregnancy. I was like, I can't feel this awful all the time. I'm going to go swimming and swim 1 kilometre a day. With this baby inside, I can do it, and then just keep sort of building on that as the babies came out.
Did you believe that your career would come back?
No.
Oh.
I was looking at being an Uber driver. I'm a really bad driver. can't see at night. Also hate chit chat.
Yeah.
But working as a cafe, in a cafe I can make quite good coffee. Being a cook, I was really looking at what I could do sideways that would work for me, which I think I'm still kind of doing as well. Like you've always got to have a hustle. In media in Australia, there's just not that many full-time good jobs.
No. And not reliably, not ones that you can rely on to stick around for a long time.
No. Yeah. I mean, that's the nature of the beast. But it was a really humbling time. And I felt that. I felt embodying humility, What are you doing these days, Yumi? Making babies, it was really hard. As somebody who's always loved working, and love to define myself by, I'm doing this cool thing, and I got to go, for instance, when I was working in music TV, I got to go to Munich in Germany to interview Kylie Minogue for her 40th birthday. And we had a cake and we sang and she did a performance that night. And it was like, this stuff is really, really, it's such a gift to be part of. And it'd be like, I'm going to Munich next week. And then suddenly it's like, no, I'm just home mashing pumpkin. For my babies.
That would have been so hard. You can't even begin to having everything you've worked so hard for taken away for you for something so minor, and then to also think, and it's done forever now. That's actually it forever.
Yeah.
You must go to some pretty dark places. Even just remembering that, is it, or do you? How do you look back on that time?
It's fine to remember it now because I'm so successful now.
And powerful.
I'm powerful. Yeah. No, it's good because I think a bit of humbling is quite healthy. I also had a really good friend, Carla, who used to just drive over to my house and sit with me. And I would be like, I got nothing good to say. I gotta just go buy some milk. She'll be like, that's the thing we're going to do today. We're going to go buy milk. And she was just so generous. She taught me a lot about being a good friend and what it means to show up, She just day after day would come over and let me be sad.
What an amazing person.
I don't think I've learned more about friendship from anyone else
really?
Than from her, yeah.
Had you known her for a long time at that point?
Yeah, 20 years.
Oh, wow.
She was, she still is just one of the great people in my life. I think somebody who radiates sunshine and care, and sets an example that I learn from every day of how to show up for people.
It's so nice, and also I'm sure you've experienced, and I think we all have, but I think in our industry, sometimes it feels like maybe more people want to hang out with you when you're doing really well. And because, I don't know, this is very cynical, but I think also slightly true, is that people feel like, oh, well, maybe this is an opportunity for me, you know, if I can spend time with this successful person. And I think you do see that a lot. So to have someone who is just there unconditionally and doesn't want anything from you, how incredible.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, and she knows that there's good times and bad. So, you know, we went and saw Nick Cave together the other night, held hands and cried. He played Into My Arms and we were just like, oh, this is just, you know, it's just magic and transporting. But you're right about, you know, people are attracted to success, and that was the feeling I had about being infectious, is like I'm repellent right now because I've got all this failure around me. Like my loser halo is radiating toxicity out, and I don't want my friends to catch it. I want to protect them from it.
Do you reckon going through that experience, do you think that has changed who you are as a person or a performer or both?
Yeah, definitely.
And
yeah.
How?
Well, I'm cynical about the landscape of Australian media, you know, in that so many chances and second chances will be given to white guys. And really you get one go as a woman, especially a woman of colour, and any failure is amplified.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's tattooed on your record. So you can't get away from it. And it's partly because of racism. It's partly because all the people who are in charge look like and are white guys, middle-aged white guys. So, of course, they feel safe around people who are like them and give jobs to people who are like them.
Do you mind if I ask you about, like, so being on the receiving end of being cancelled, I feel like it's, even though it feels like it happens a lot, it really doesn't to the level that you've experienced. And so I'm just really interested, because when it happens and when the internet piles on someone, or the complaints department at Channel 10 can't believe that people are still making calls to, to anyone. But like, I often think like the shock jocks and the editors of certain magazines and blogs and newspapers, I often think like, how are they not thinking about the well-being of the person they're writing about? Because clearly they know that what they're doing, they're only doing it because it's causing outrage, it's dividing people, and so it's getting more ratings, more clicks, blah, blah, blah. We all know that. Have you put much thought into thinking about like not only the hosts of the shows and the editors of the outlets, but the individuals making the complaints and writing the comments? Do you think they think about the person behind it?
No, not at all, because it's bloodletting. It's their own anger and their own rage and their own powerlessness that they get to kind of fire off like ninja stars, you know.
Yeah.
And it's quite a purge for them. So they feel better afterwards. You know, they've regained some of their power. I think that's part of it. I think another part is, while Gaza is happening and you're seeing thousands of children get killed, it's easier to criticise someone's gown at the Met Ball because it's safe, it's contained, there's nothing at stake, no one's going to threaten your livelihood over what you say there. But I think we're also seeing another real-life example happening right now. It's not so amplified here in Australia, but Kim Kardashian is currently going through a backlash in the States.
I was just thinking about that when you're talking,
And
What's
I
that
think
for? What's her backlash?
I don't remember. I think it's just generally we're overexposure perhaps.
Yep.
But she was booed really, really mercilessly at a roast. It was at the White House roast or something. And it was so loud that it kind of drowned her out, and it really made the booing front and centre. So this woman is getting up on stage at a podium to speak, and she's being drowned out by people booing her. So the great big wheel of justice in the media has turned to the point where now Kim Kardashian is the new Britney Spears or the Monica Lewinsky, the acceptable target that we're all going to jump in and we're all going to lay some boots in and kick and kick and kick. And because she has been irritating, because she is extremely wealthy and powerful, everybody feels like that's okay. She's lost her humanity now.
She can take it.
She can take it. She deserves it. And it's quite frightening to see the fangs out for this woman, because it's like when we see it, when a woman sees it, we know that it could be easily us next time.
Mm-hmm.
Nothing makes you immune from it. The cycle goes around and there'll be another victim next time.
There's something you talked about in your, I can't think of a better word, but kind of rebuilding post cancellation. And you mentioned that a cookbook is something that's safe, that is not going to piss anyone off, and I can do this. But it also seems like you've made, I don't know, certainly not a jump into doing things that would piss people off, but into, I guess, an area, and we open this interview saying that you don't care if people don't like you. So how do you go from the safe stuff to the less safe stuff that you're doing now?
I took a page from Donald Trump.
Wow, I did not expect that to be the start of the answer.
In that, the way that he's approached winning elections is to piss heaps of people off, but just speak very loudly to a select group of people.
Yeah.
And I think that's kind of my career from now on, is I'm not trying to win the hearts and minds of everybody. I'm just trying to speak to the people who need to hear it, that I really love and care about, which is girls, young women, young teen boys, kids basically.
Yeah.
So that's kind of the approach, right? That's it. Is like, where's my silo?
Yep.
Can I fortify it? Can I really love and respect these people, and can I give them something that they find useful? And that's sort of where I'm at with what I write and what I do.
It sounds like from what you're saying there, there's a purpose behind what you do. Does that sort of insulate that silo a bit as well?
I don't know if it does. It certainly helps fire you up to do the work. I think with having a purpose in your work, that's wonderful, but you can also make mistakes. So you have to be open enough to say, oh my God, I missed that. You know, I could have done that better, and be constantly trying to improve, which I know this podcast is about that. So I got to almost submitting the manuscript for Welcome to Your Period, and I realised that at no point had we centred the voices of disabled people. So what's it like to get your period in a wheelchair? Oh my God, we nearly put the book to print without having included that part of the story.
Yeah.
There's constant need for self-examination and correction and improvement, and I hope to be doing it till the day I die. It's something I say to my children is I'm an imperfect person and I'm an imperfect mother, but I'm really trying and working on, getting there and getting the resources, educating myself, updating my language. There's things that we used to say, I'm sure all of us, 15 years ago, that we would never say on air now.
Oh, there's stuff I said 60 minutes ago that I would never say now.
Mohawk. To answer your question, definitely purpose, but also a little bit of that humility ongoing. Is like I always need to keep learning, and I always need to keep thinking about who my audience is.
Yeah, beautiful.
Just to come back to alcohol, where we started this conversation, I'm interested to know, in your experience, it sounds like you're a lot of fun when you're drinking. Was it damaging to relationships, be they romantic, or it sounds like you had incredible people who stayed by, but do you feel like did you damage any relationships along the way? It seems to be a common thing I hear, people struggling with alcohol.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, you've got your party mates, your drinking buddies, and people talk a lot about when you quit drinking, a lot of the friends change. You have to let go of some people. And that definitely happened, but not to such a drastic extent that it was like a complete flushing out of groups of people. But I think there were many times when I was, I could have been a much better sister, and a much better daughter, a better partner, and definitely a better friend. And just the whole friend thing is something that I'm really examining. As I mentioned off air, I'm working on my next book, which is about friendship. It's not out till Christmas next year, so I'm not promoting it because it doesn't exist. But the intentionality in a friendship is something that I'm really proud of. Is something that I've grown in, from 30 years old onwards. Because I think prior to that, I was scared. I was trying to be cool. I wanted to be a cool friend, the party kid, or the party starter, the facilitator of fun. And to understand the spectrum of Yumis that can show up in a friendship situation. It can be sad Yumi. It can be, I don't have anything to do today except buy milk. But it can also be like, I've got this freaking awesome thing I want to do together. That can be me as well. And all those people are sober. And that's something that I think that it takes a bit of adjusting to, but you learn that, and you learn which friends you can do that with and which friends are more interested in just getting blitzed.
I went to a mate's house on Sunday and I was a bit sick and just not feeling great. I really liked this person and the other guys that were there, and I just was aware that I wasn't myself, and I found myself going like, no, you need to entertain, like you have to perform, or you have to be the fun, positive person. And then I kind of just halfway through, I'm like, I just don't have the energy. I'm feeling sick. I'm trying to manage kids, and I just wasn't quite myself. But it felt like a really mature thing in life to be able to go, well, I think they'll still like me.
Aww.
And it just was sort of it popped into my head then when you were talking about that, is that like that finding friends that you don't have to, you can have a shit day around, and they're still there, is a really wonderful thing.
I went through a divorce last year. I think it's August 18. It's one of my happiest days of my life. But I found that the whole process is incredibly grueling and tough, and it's not really over yet. But the friends that I had to tap to go, I need help right now. There's a bunch of legal stuff I don't understand, or can you read this and just interpret it for me? I had to keep those people around me in a state of need and helplessness. And it was really, I felt at first, I was like, am I being that guy? Like, am I being that needy, constantly complaining, always swirling around drama? You know, I hate drama. I want to be balanced and level-headed. I want to be the person others can come to and ask for help. But in the last 2 years, I have been that person saying, please help me. What does this say? Interpret this. What should be my next step? And all these people, it sounds like dozens. It's not dozens. It's like a cluster of 5. 5 people have been in my inner circle saying, here's what to do. And when one is tired and taps out, the other one can step in. And the group of these people have really shown me that I'm allowed to be needy and annoying and have problems, and they will step up for me. And that people, and I know this from the flip side, people like being asked for help. People like it when you say, I'm feeling a bit bummed today. Can we just sit here in silence and like flick through the TV together? And that's like, oh, yes, that sounds delightful. Yeah, let's do that. It's about being, vulnerable and authentic and open. And they know who you are. They know that you're like actually quite fun most of the time and a party starter. But it is very vulnerable to show the spectrum of you, isn't it?
But it's when you show it to the right people, it's a pretty lovely experience.
Yeah, and then that gives them permission to do the same for you.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Was there a time, like having gone through the roller coaster that you've gone through, and it's so fascinating, and to hear your story, or at least the part that you've shared today. But was there a point where you were consciously you realised you're like, oh, this is what life's about? Like, was there ever a moment where you had that realization? Was there ever a moment where you're like, oh, this is it? Or this is, does that make sense?
Yeah. I don't know if it was like a single moment, but I think it's like maybe a series of realizations. Postnatal depression is really real and hectic. And I had that, and I realized when I got it the second time, twice out of 4 kids, so it's not a bad strike rate. But I realized that the second time, there's no shortcut out of this. It's just something I'm going to have to ride until it's over, and it could take months, right? So that's shit. But you kind of also know, well, at least I know that from last time it did come to an end. So you work out how to manage it while you're in it. It's like, you're crawling through mud with barbed wire above you. You just have to get to the other end. And there are some things that really work for you. So I mentioned it before, and it's so nerdy and annoying. So I apologize in advance, but exercise is a really good drug. I mean, like I've said, I've worked in the music industry. I've tried a few, not all of them, but I've tried a few, and it's my favorite. There's no hangover. There's no crashing come down. It's pretty cheap, if not free, and you can take it every single day, and, no one calls you an addict or a skeezy junkie. So that among other things I understood during postnatal depression was a drug I had to take every day, like my medicine, and it's that, if you really push yourself in exercise and you get that high, like a runner's high or an post-gym workout endorphin high, it is like you are cocooned in a good mood for the whole day. If you've done it right, you are. So you can throw at me a divorce or a kid in dire trouble at school, a friend upset, and I'm still in my cocoon. I'm still responding, but I'm okay. I'm mentally not being knocked to the floor. A diet, of course, does make a difference. So just eating foods that make you feel really great, if possible. So those two medicines are kind of the drugs that I try and take every single day. And that's realising that, right? It took me a while, and you always want to go, can I cheat?
Can I take a running pill?
It's like when you go to a wellness retreat or something and you're meant to do like an hour and a half of yoga and then you go and get a massage, and the massage is unreal.
Yes.
If you try and just shortcut to the massage, it's not going to be as good.
Yeah.
So, and that's the same with this gaming your body to feel good, is you have to put in the work. But the payoff is real, and you can take it every day. Realising that means I feel pretty invulnerable to mental health blows, to really bad mood moments. I can still have a downer. I had to get a tooth pulled the other day.
Oof.
Oh, my God. I felt like so skanky. When you feel sort of festy.
Yeah.
The dentist pulled out this tooth, and then he said, there's the abscess on it and there's the crack. And he had these little long metal like tweezery things, and he was poking at the abscess going, and it was like a dangly bit of meat hanging off
the tooth.
Yeah. I was like, I am foul. I am actually foul.
Oh, God. What a confronting moment.
And I'd said, look, how long is this going to take? Because I've got to do school pickup. He's like, I'll do it in 5 minutes. But then I had to literally get out of the chair and run to my kids' school and pick them up, and I had blood gushing out of my mouth.
Wow.
That could have been a real downer, but I was sort of in my cocoon. I'd been to the gym and I knew I'd probably be able to go the next day, and I was good. So it was a blow, but it was also something that I survived. And I think that knowing that, you can set yourself up for a fairly resilient life.
Love it.
Beautiful.
I want to talk about that for an hour, but I just feel like so many people we chat to in this podcast.
Yeah,
the
they
conclusion is I discovered exercise, and it's no one's described it as the cocoon, but what a wonderful description. Certainly the case for me. I mean, I've done it my whole life, but it's like for me, I've had to have the last month off exercise with the way my season is for running, and I cannot believe how different I feel. It's just I start on Monday and I cannot wait,
Right.
because I need that cocoon back.
You don't have the cocoon at the moment.
No. I've got a little bit of a cocoon because it was such a big year of training, and I've got a big year coming up. So it's like it's a different type of cocoon, but I don't have the immediate cocoon around me right now, and I miss it. And just I think it's such a great description. So many people have described what it's like to them, but that one really resonates.
You mentioned postnatal depression before, and I think it's an area that we've sort of, people who have come on the show have briefly mentioned, but I wanted to know, because having had kids, or having 2 kids, it's a full on, like it hits you for 10, I don't know, there's a better expression than that. It's
He's
really
not a
hard.
big cricket fan. It's sex, Josh.
And they talk about, like, I remember when we were getting all the education, they're like, you'll hit the day 3 blues, and that's going to be for the person who's given birth, my wife. What my question is, how do you know when you're just going through what it's like to be a parent of a young kid, a baby? How do you know when it's the difference between this is fucking hard and I'm struggling to this is postnatal depression and I'm really struggling?
Thanks for the question. I think that's really thoughtful and kind, especially for the young mums. But, and by the way, dads can get postnatal depression as well. I think there's medical definitions of postnatal depression. So it's when you feel helpless, hopeless, when you can't get out of bed, and it goes on for more than 3 days.
Okay.
So a few days in a row is perfectly acceptable. But if it's starting to go on and you feel like you can't see an end to it, then that's when you need to start getting help.
Okay.
But I think in any situation where there's a new baby, getting as much help as you possibly can is really, really recommended. So for some people who are hormonally sensitive, that's when it's going to really kick off. So if you've got a partner, or you are a person who is really sensitive to, say, PMS and the mood swing that comes with that, then there's a big chance that you're going to be sensitive to what happens to your body post giving birth.
Okay.
And so you can be forewarned and prepare yourself for that. But there's, like I said, there's no way to fast track getting out of postnatal depression. There are things people around you can do. So I'd recommend if you've got a friend with a new baby, something I always do is drop over food.
Yeah.
And that's just a way of, you can show up for them on their doorstep. They can say, stay away, I'm asleep, or I don't want to see anybody right now. But you have given them the opportunity to see you if they want. You've got eyes on them if you can, and you've also taken a meal off their things to-do list. For the partner, there's so much to do. There is so much. There's so much more that male partners could do in heterosexual relationships when a new baby's has arrived. First of all, that bitch is thirsty. Give her a lot of water. Always. Just check the water situation. You are now the water guy. Yeah. So just always be making sure she's got water within reach. She can't hop up necessarily if she's breastfeeding. Supply food. Keep the phone near her and charged. But also, if the baby's asleep, that is not your chance to go golfing or gaming on a video console. That is, hey, sweetie, why don't we go for a walk? Or would you like to go for a walk by yourself? Or do you want me to do something to facilitate you getting the fuck out of the house and some fresh air and some horizons and skies that are going to make you feel so much better and prepared to face the baby next time? Another thing is, she doesn't have to do every night feed, and she doesn't have to comfort the baby every single time. If the baby's screaming its head off and you know the baby's fed, she still can leave, right? She might feel it. Her boobs will be going, wah, wah, stay. baby needs me. There's a very strong communication between her body and the baby's crying. But if possible, send her out to go and live a life, even if she sits in the car at Aldi in the car park and has a cry. At least she's getting some space and some time to herself.
Yeah.
Preach, sister.
That is such a good answer, and I'm so glad you said it. Yeah.
God, it's also the first time we've heard Hugh say preach, sister.
Is it the first time boobs have gone gwant, gwant?
Also the first.
Yeah. It's also the first time anyone said horny, which you said before on the podcast. So a few firsts. Today. I feel like horny isn't said enough. It's a great word.
I agree. I think people should use it for everything. Like,
Well, it might get confusing.
we're just like horny for cricket or something.
Oh, right. Yeah. Okay, yeah. It's like you're excited.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and women do get horny for a baby. Like, really want to have a baby. I'm horny for the, I want to fill me with your
Seed.
I was going to say sex juice.
Oh, yeah, that's way
Yeah.
Another first.
That's why you got the job on Channel V and I didn't. And okay, welcome to Channel V audition. So what would you call semen? Seed? No better ideas? Nah, that seems the coolest to me.
All right, we'll be in touch. Yeah.
Thanks. All right, Jabba.
Isn't it always great when it's all the conversations are great when you're chatting to someone who's an experienced broadcaster.
I know.
Quite a few times I found myself going, oh, hang on, no, I'm meant to be driving this. You're just so great to chat to, so great to listen to.
Oh.
And I think so many points about what you spoke today will help so many people. I think for anyone who is struggling right now with alcohol addiction, I think to hear where you've been and where you are now will be so empowering and will provide so much hope in what it sounds like in a place where there isn't much hope. So, Yumi, thank you so much for being so generous with your story and you're a beautiful storyteller. And yeah, it's been great to spend this time with you.
Thanks for having me.
Thanks, Hugh.
Thanks, Yumi.